This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the briefing. We are tracking a major military escalation in the Middle East, a massive release of government UFO files, and significant court rulings that are reshaping the American political landscape.
U.S. forces disabled 2 Iranian tankers in the Strait.
Tehran condemns the U.S. for reckless military adventures.
The Pentagon released declassified documents on UFO sightings.
Virginia's Supreme Court nullified a major redistricting referendum.
Trump issues pardons while dismantling corruption oversight units.
The Supreme Court effectively neuters the Voting Rights Act.
Virginia's ruling hands a victory to House Republicans.
ABC fights the FCC over equal time rules.
Starting in the Middle East, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz has reached a boiling point as U.S. forces disabled 2 Iranian oil tankers on Friday. This followed a night of exchanging fire between American and Iranian forces in one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. The U.S. military released video footage showing an American fighter jet striking the smokestacks of the tankers to prevent them from breaching a blockade. This military action comes at a time when the United Arab Emirates is also reporting missile and drone attacks from Iran, further complicating the regional security picture. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been vocal, stating that if Iranian forces threaten Americans, they will be blown up. The U.S. is currently enforcing its own blockade of Iranian ports while waiting for a serious diplomatic offer from Tehran to end the conflict.
This escalation is particularly dangerous because it threatens the global energy supply. Iran has largely blocked the Strait of Hormuz since the war began in late February, which has already caused fuel prices to spike and rattled international markets. About 20% of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas passes through this narrow waterway. The U.S. military reported that it also thwarted attacks on 3 Navy ships and struck Iranian military facilities in the strait. While the U.S. insists a month-old ceasefire is technically still in effect, these kinetic actions suggest otherwise. The human cost is also rising, with reports from Iranian-affiliated media indicating that at least 1 sailor was killed and 10 others were injured during an overnight strike on a cargo vessel. The international community is watching closely to see if this leads to a full-scale regional war.
Now to Iran's response. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, has come out swinging against the United States, labeling the recent naval actions as a reckless military adventure. He argued that every time a diplomatic solution appears to be on the table, Washington chooses military force instead. Araghchi posted on social media that Iranians would never bow to pressure, signaling a defiant stance even as the U.S. continues to disable their vessels. Despite these intense clashes, President Trump has maintained that the ceasefire remains intact, viewing it as a necessary framework for ongoing talks. The U.S. is pushing for a deal that would not only end the current maritime war, but also roll back Tehran's nuclear program. However, the disconnect between the diplomatic rhetoric and the reality of missiles flying in the Gulf suggests a very fragile path forward for any lasting peace agreement.
The pressure on Tehran is immense, as the U.S. Central Command is currently preventing more than 70 tankers from entering or leaving Iranian ports. This naval blockade is a central part of the strategy to force Iran into accepting U.S. terms. Meanwhile, the U.S. is also trying to manage other regional fires, signaling readiness to host talks between Israel and Lebanon to halt clashes with Hezbollah. Vice President J.D. Vance has been meeting with Qatari leadership to discuss these broader regional tensions. The U.S. and Israel are demanding the full disarmament of Hezbollah as part of any peace deal, a condition the group has rejected. As the U.S. balances these multiple fronts, the economic impact of the blocked strait continues to be a primary concern for the administration, especially with the global energy market remaining so volatile.
Next, the Pentagon files. In a move that has captivated the public, the Pentagon has released a massive tranche of declassified documents regarding unidentified flying objects, or UFOs. These files, released at the direction of President Trump, span several decades and include accounts from both civilians and astronauts. Among the most intriguing documents are transcripts from the Apollo moon missions. For instance, Buzz Aldrin described seeing a bright light source during the Apollo 11 mission that he tentatively thought might be a laser. Other astronauts, like Alan Bean from Apollo 12, reported seeing particles and flashes of light that appeared to be escaping from the moon's surface. These revelations come at a time of renewed national interest in extraterrestrial life, following the first congressional hearings on the subject in 50 years. The Department of Defense has promised even more transparency as they continue to upload these historical records.
The release of these 161 files follows comments from former President Obama, who recently stated that while he hasn't seen evidence of aliens, they are statistically likely to exist. The documents provide a fascinating look into how the military has tracked unidentified aerial phenomena over the years. During the Apollo 17 mission in 1972, astronauts Jack Schmitt and his crewmates described seeing flashes of light that they compared to a 4th of July celebration. While many of these sightings were historically kept under wraps, the current administration's push for disclosure is aimed at satisfying the tremendous public interest. While the documents don't provide a smoking gun for alien life, they do confirm that highly trained pilots and astronauts have frequently encountered phenomena they could not explain. This transparency is a significant shift for a military that has historically been very secretive about such reports.
Moving to Virginia's courts. The Virginia Supreme Court has delivered a major blow to Democrats by nullifying a recent voter referendum on redistricting. The court ruled that the process used to place the question on the ballot violated the state constitution. Specifically, the justices found that Democratic lawmakers failed to follow the required timeline, which mandates that a constitutional amendment must pass twice with an election in between. Because Democrats put the item on the ballot after early voting had already started for that middle election, the court determined the entire process was flawed. This decision effectively wipes out the results of a vote in which 3 million people participated. The referendum would have allowed Democrats to redraw 4 congressional districts in their favor, but now those maps are in legal limbo. It is a stark reminder of how procedural rules can completely derail major political shifts.
The political fallout in Virginia is significant, as the referendum had passed with a narrow 52% majority. For the last several weeks, this redistricting battle has been the lifeblood of state politics. Democrats had argued that the court should wait until after the election to rule, hoping the will of the voters would carry weight. However, the majority of the justices stated that the margin of victory was irrelevant if the underlying process was unconstitutional. This ruling is a major victory for Republicans, who had fought the referendum as a partisan power grab. It also highlights the intense scrutiny being applied to election laws and procedures across the country. With the 2026 midterms on the horizon, the inability of Democrats to shift these districts could have a direct impact on which party controls the House of Representatives in the future.
Now, Trump's pardon strategy. President Trump is making waves with a series of pardons for individuals convicted of public corruption. Since returning to office, he has granted clemency to at least 15 former elected officials and their associates who faced corruption charges. This move aligns with his campaign promise to dismantle what he calls the weaponized justice system. Beyond the pardons, the administration has also effectively gutted the public integrity section of the Justice Department. This unit, which is responsible for investigating and prosecuting election crimes and public corruption, has seen its staff of 40 attorneys dwindle to just 2. The number of open investigations has also plummeted from 200 to about 20. Critics argue that this is a systematic effort to weaken the federal government's ability to police itself, while supporters see it as a necessary correction to overzealous and politically motivated prosecutions.
The pattern of these pardons is notable because they often involve political allies, donors, and supporters. While every president uses the pardon power, the focus on public corruption cases is a distinct hallmark of the current administration. By pardoning those convicted of misusing their offices, Trump is sending a clear message about his view of federal law enforcement. The decimation of the public integrity section further reinforces this shift. Without a robust team of prosecutors dedicated to these complex cases, many investigations into government misconduct may simply stall or never begin. The Justice Department has not provided a formal comment on these staffing changes, but the impact is already being felt in the legal community. This approach to executive power and judicial oversight is likely to remain a central point of contention as the administration continues to reshape the Department of Justice.
Next, the Voting Rights Act. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling in Louisiana v. Calais that many legal experts say effectively kills the Voting Rights Act as we know it. The decision, written by Justice Samuel Alito and joined by Chief Justice John Roberts, now requires advocates to prove racially discriminatory intent when challenging a district map. This is a massive shift from the 1982 reauthorization of the law, which only required showing that a map resulted in discriminatory outcomes. By raising the bar to proving intent, the court has made it nearly impossible to challenge maps drawn by state legislatures. This ruling is seen as the culmination of a decades-long effort by Chief Justice Roberts to roll back voting protections. The immediate impact is already visible across the South, where states are moving quickly to eliminate congressional seats that were previously protected for Black representation.
The consequences of this decision are unfolding rapidly. In just the week since the ruling, Florida and Tennessee have enacted new maps that eliminate Black majority districts. Other states like Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina are expected to follow suit. The court's logic was that a Black majority district in Louisiana was an illegal racial gerrymander, because race was used as a primary consideration. However, critics point out that in the South, race and political party are deeply intertwined. By allowing legislatures to claim their maps are based on partisan goals rather than racial ones, the court has provided a legal shield for the removal of minority-held seats. This is being described as the greatest rollback of Black political representation since the Jim Crow era. It fundamentally changes the landscape for the 2026 elections and beyond, potentially securing a long-term advantage for the Republican Party in the House.
Shifting to the 2026 outlook, the Virginia Supreme Court's decision to strike down the redistricting measure is a major win for the GOP in the broader fight for control of Congress. Republicans currently hold a very slim majority in the House, and this ruling, combined with the U.S. Supreme Court's gutting of the Voting Rights Act, gives them a significant edge heading into the 2026 midterms. The 4-3 ruling in Virginia was based on the finding that Democrats advanced the amendment in an unprecedented and procedurally flawed manner. This prevents a map that would have likely favored Democrats in a 10-1 split. Instead, the current map, which is split 6-5, will remain in place. Republican lawmakers have praised the court for upholding the rule of law, while Democrats, including Governor Abigail Spanberger, have blasted the decision as an effort to silence the will of the voters.
While this is a setback for Democrats, some analysts suggest the House remains competitive. Election experts note that while the GOP has a better shot now, it is not a guaranteed victory. Democrats are hoping to offset these redistricting losses by winning in swing districts, where President Trump's popularity might be a liability for Republican candidates. However, the cumulative effect of these court rulings cannot be overstated. By securing favorable lines in states like Virginia and across the South, Republicans are building a structural advantage that is hard to overcome through campaigning alone. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee has called the Virginia ruling a power grab by unelected judges. As both parties prepare for the next election cycle, the battle over how districts are drawn remains one of the most consequential and contentious issues in American politics, directly impacting the balance of power in Washington.
Finally, ABC versus FCC. ABC is taking a stand against the Trump administration, accusing it of trying to chill free speech through the Federal Communications Commission. The dispute centers on the popular talk show The View and whether it should be subject to equal time rules. These rules require broadcasters to provide equal airtime to opposing political candidates, but bona fide news programs are exempt. ABC argues that The View is a news program and should remain exempt, while FCC Chairman Brendan Carr has indicated he wants to reclassify it. ABC's legal filing claims that the Commission's actions threaten decades of settled law and are intended to hinder open political discussion. This battle is seen as part of a larger conflict between the media and a White House that has been openly critical of journalists and outlets that do not support its agenda.
The FCC's stance is that equal time laws actually empower voters by ensuring they hear from all sides. However, the move to target The View is seen by many as a direct response to the show's frequent criticism of President Trump. If the FCC is successful, it could set a precedent that affects many other programs that blend entertainment with political commentary. This isn't the only legal fight between the administration and the press. There are ongoing disputes involving the New York Times, the Associated Press, and the Wall Street Journal. ABC's filing emphasizes that the administration's pressure is creating a climate where critical speech is being suppressed. As the FCC reviews whether Disney's assertion that the show is a news program holds up, the outcome will have major implications for how political content is regulated on broadcast television and the extent of government influence over media content.
That's the briefing for today. Join us again tomorrow for another focused look at the stories shaping our world. For more updates throughout the day, follow this show on your favorite platform.